Roguelike fans and first-person shooter fans rejoice because we've got a new roguelike FPS on the market named GUNHEAD. In GUNHEAD, you'll board derelict spaceships to collect guns, destroy alien machinery, and perform brain surgery, also you can earn some cash to buy more guns and repeat the process over and over again. While it may sound simplistic on the surface, GUNHEAD adds a level of strategy to the tried-and-true roguelike formula that makes it more challenging and consistently engaging even after 100+ deaths. My name's Johnny Bueno, and GUNHEAD reminded me how demanding client work can be. Because, well, that's how the game sets the stage as soon as you boot it up. A rather shady-looking client commissions you and your ragtag space crew with salvaging derelict alien vessels for their parts, and fortunately, they're willing to pay handsomely for a job well done. Except when a job doesn't get done and you fail, you'll be chastised by the client who's always there to remind you that you suck at the game. It's almost like he doesn't know that this is a roguelike and trial and error is just part of the gameplay experience.
You failed to obtain the asset, and now we must deal with the fallout. Your lack of skill and foresight has resulted in a significant setback to our operations.
The rest of your crew is pretty chill though. They'll offer their expertise on the types of spaceships you'll be trekking through, more on that later, as well as the types of guns you pick up during your run. They're all kind of quirky in their own unique way, and I grew to like them more and more as the game went on.
Hey, can you be a little more careful out there? I don't want to spend all my smoke breaks bumping out dents.
Although they could have at least been given names to match their colorful personalities better instead of simply being known by their role in the crew, like scientist, engineer, or captain. Super minor nitpick though, and I should mention that they were all voiced quite well, so kudos to the voice actors. When it comes to the graphical style of GUNHEAD, the game opts for a more cel-shaded presentation, which can add a lot of character to a game when done right, and I think it's executed pretty well for the most part. Gunfights can get pretty frantic, and the cel shading kind of helps make sense of all the madness, as it's easier to pick out enemies and important power-ups when everything has a visible outline. On top of that, the inside of the ships are fairly detailed in that it's filled with various metallic structures, wires, pods, and colorful glass tubes filled with mysterious space liquids. They give off a very biomechanic vibe that I think the cel shading style accentuates quite well. What isn't accentuated is the exterior of the ships, which all pretty much look like a bunch of dark blocks attached together. Because of this, while the actual layout of each ship is different, they all end up having an identical aesthetic on the outside. It's not the worst, as you really don't spend too much time outside of the ships, but it would be nice to see some more ways to differentiate ship exteriors from one another to make each run all the more unique. But I suppose in this case it really is the inside that counts.
Key code recovered.
Now let's talk about actual gameplay. While GUNHEAD does appear to be your typical roguelike affair on the surface, there's an additional layer of strategy when it comes to the layout of every ship and the systems present in each room of the ship. Systems are essentially the defenses that will be present on a ship when you go to raid it, and they come in several different varieties. This includes factory systems that constantly spawn enemies, repair systems that will heal other systems over time, alarm systems that will alert the ship's denizens to your presence, and many more. One of the more important systems you'll encounter is the shield system, which targets another system on the ship, making it invulnerable until the shield system is destroyed. Its target will typically be the literal brain of the ship, which is your primary target to destroy to finish a level. The placement of these systems heavily influence where you start and how you navigate through each ship, and you're given a nice overview of this before starting a level, so you're able to pre-plan and strategize. So, for example, your obvious goal is to destroy the brain, but you first need to destroy the shield system protecting it to make it vulnerable, so you'll want to find the entry point closest to that system to take it out. But there's an alarm system protecting the shield system, so if you want to stay undetected, you'll first need to destroy the alarm system. This decision-making process is something I love about GUNHEAD because you can't just go in guns blazing, you need to first figure out the best path to victory and determine if taking out any other systems is worth the risk. Systems present on each ship are determined by the type of ship you'll be taking on, and you have the option of 3 different ships to choose from when selecting a level. These can include overgrowth ships, which sometimes have multiple brains, warships with tougher armored enemies, or network ships that feature these incredibly annoying shuffle systems that swap the position of all other systems present on the ship. As you progress through a campaign, these ships will get progressively larger, containing more rooms and more systems to prioritize and deal with. If you're like me, you'll find yourself preferring ships featuring the less annoying systems like the previously mentioned shuffle system, but there are incentives in place that push you to tackle some of the more challenging ships. This comes in the form of bonus objectives that you can complete for additional cash, which of course can be used to buy weapons and new mechs. These bonus objectives can completely change how you approach a ship, but the risk is typically worth the reward, as this is where the majority of the cash you can obtain comes from. An obvious example being the bonus objective that has you destroy every single system, forcing you to trek through the entire ship instead of beelining for the brain. Conversely, there are bonus objectives that have you not destroy specific systems or leave a certain number of systems intact, forcing you to complete a level with an added handicap. There are of course some less challenging objectives like beating the ship under a certain time limit, so it's not a complete headache to get some extra spending money. Either way, I felt like these bonus objectives served as a great way to incentivize risk versus reward while pushing players to familiarize themselves with each ship format. As mentioned, you'll be earning cash from these bonus objectives and completing ships, and that hard-earned cash will go towards purchasing new weapons, power-ups, and new mech suits, each with their own unique starting weapons, level of mobility, and total health. One thing I liked is that spending money on weapons and power-ups has two purposes. Your purchase will both be added to your current inventory, in addition to being permanently unlocked as a random pickup found within each ship. So if you have a particular weapon you're fond of, you don't have to cross your fingers that it drops while you're raiding a ship. You can just have it from the get-go, assuming you have the money to keep purchasing it. When it comes to actually using those weapons, you won't simply be swapping between them one at a time. Gunhead lets you equip a total of 4 weapons that you can shoot simultaneously. Want to bury enemies in a hail of bullets with 4 machine guns? Go for it. Want to destroy bosses in a fraction of a second with 4 different types of rocket launchers? Enjoy. Or you could mix it up and have a different weapon class equipped to each slot for some more balanced gameplay. It's really up to you how you approach combat, and I absolutely love that level of freedom, even if it's slightly dictated by RNG when it comes to weapon pickups, unless you constantly spend money to buy them beforehand. It should be noted that when it comes to the quad weapon approach in Gunhead, the mouse and keyboard controls are slightly awkward. This approach seems much more natural on a controller where you're given a pair of shoulder and trigger buttons, but with the default mouse and keyboard mapping, your guns will be bound to the left mouse button, right mouse button, middle mouse button, and F on your keyboard. Fortunately, you can rebind your keys to whatever is the most comfortable for you, but there was admittedly something that felt off about having my 4th gun bound to a keyboard key, and with the standard 3-button mouse, you don't really have much of a choice. But it's not a total deal breaker, and I opted to just set my weakest gun that I wasn't using as much in that 4th slot, and I had no problems beating the game. Maneuvering your mech suit feels pretty fluid though, with each suit being equipped with a jetpack, allowing for a high level of verticality when moving through a ship. Because of this, combat can get pretty frantic, as enemies will often be engaging you from all sides and you'll usually be left wondering what's shooting at you. However, you're also given a dash that works mid-air, allowing you to zip around and constantly reposition yourself to avoid the attacks you can actually see coming. It took me a while to get used to, and I frequently died on my very first ship during my first few hours of playing, but once I got the hang of it, I found the incredibly fast-paced mid-air combat to be pretty satisfying. Enemy variety in Gunhead is pretty decent, with a standard mix of fast melee enemies and shooty ranged enemies, in addition to some immobile turrets here and there. Non-boss enemies all go down relatively quick, and the real challenge lies in the quantity of enemies you'll encounter in each room. It's easy to get overwhelmed in some of the larger rooms with a high enemy count as you're being harassed from all directions. Several buzzsaws will be spinning in your face while you're being sniped from across the room by a turret and accidentally tripping every alarm, and it can just feel incredibly chaotic at times, but let's be honest, that's part of the fun when playing a fast-paced roguelike. It comes down to learning to prioritize targets and taking out the most immediate threats first. You can try to go straight for the necessary systems in the ship's brain, but you most likely won't be coming out unscathed. Because, on top of the enemies, systems themselves also come with their own unique defenses. Some will have a simple shield that will block your shots when shooting at a certain angle, while others come with their own weapons to deter you from getting too close. Some also have fairly unique defenses, like one that requires you to do a few sequences with your directional buttons to open up the vulnerable core. As you can imagine, this is an absolute pain to do without first clearing the room of enemies. So, systems aren't simply going to let you blow them up, and their defenses are another factor to consider when you strategize how you approach a ship. Lastly, Gunhead does feature a number of bosses that show up on every 3rd ship you board. Much like the type of ship, the bosses are also randomized and can put up a decent challenge if you're not properly equipped. However, if you are properly equipped with, say, several rocket launchers, they go down surprisingly quick. Or at least this was the case when I was playing on medium difficulty. Regardless of difficulty though, the strategy to defeat each boss is pretty much the same: target the boss's weak point. This can vary from the boss's leg plates in the case of the matriarch, or the boss's core that keeps moving to different points on its body in the case of the observer. Nothing overly complicated, but again, if you go into these fights with only a single gun equipped and a dream, you're likely to have a bad time. In the world of roguelike FPSs, Gunhead manages to stand out from the rest with a level of strategy that has an impressive amount of cohesiveness with its frantic, fast-paced combat. And with some rather charming crewmates and a mostly pleasing cel-shaded art style, Gunhead adds plenty of character to its addictive gameplay formula. The game is seeing plenty of post-launch support from its developer as well, with several updates already released as of the recording of this video. So whether you're in the shooting game camp, or the roguelike camp, or even the strategy camp, I highly recommend checking this one out. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like or sharing your thoughts on Gunhead in the comments below. I appreciate every bit of interaction and support, as I love making videos just like this one. So please consider subscribing to support the channel, and as always, thank you for watching.